Hi,
Hi,
welcome back to our channel, Faith and Love. I'm Linley.
I'm Love Mo.
What are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome, babe?
So, this is basically an experience that you have internally where you feel inadequate, where you feel as though you can't live up to expectations of others, where you feel like you're a fraud, and all the efforts that you're putting through in whatever role or situation that you're in is not the authentic you, and that eventually people are going to be able to discover that this is not really who you are, that you're not able to, truly fulfill whatever it is that you're supposed to in that role, and
Yeah,
you're pretty much just a wreck.
yeah. Okay. And what are some of, maybe just to start to define or to look at some of the characteristics in which imposter syndrome sort of manifests itself in our day-to-day lives? I think one of the main pointers for imposter syndrome is when you start to attribute whatever success that you've had so far or in whatever project that you're working on, when you start to attribute that success to everything and anything else but you. So yeah, like I don't know, you can point out maybe luck or maybe because someone else showed up and helped you, but you attribute that success to everyone else or anything else that is external to external factors and not to yourself. Yeah. Yeah, and the second characteristic is when you have a fear of not living up to your expectations. So whatever expectations have been set up for you, it could be at your workspace, maybe by your boss, could be by maybe in your relationships, and you have set up expectations within your relationships or whatever. But you just have this constant fear from your just from within, without anyone really triggering those fears, but just from within, just self-doubt and doubting that you'll be able to live up to those expectations, that who you really are cannot really attain those expectations in whatever it is. And the other characteristics in which we can start to pin out and point out that maybe we're struggling with imposter syndrome is when we have this habit of what we call self-sabotage. What that simply means is, so when this is, I don't know if maybe someone can relate out there, but when you're trying to plan out for maybe whatever it is, it could be your uh, career, your business, or maybe just how you should plan out maybe your week or whatever, and you're trying to you're setting yourself up for success, right? And pointing out maybe I need to do this, I need to do that, but because at the back of your mind, you know that because of the imposter syndrome that you have, you know that you're not really that person, and you can never really achieve those things. That sort of like an inner you starts to make these other decisions that will in the end guarantee that you don't succeed. An example would be you know that you need to go to work at 7:30, you need to be at work at 7:30, and you need to wake up at maybe 7 or 6:30. But then because there's something at the back of you that knows that you can never really make it to work in time, for example, then you set an alarm for 7:15 when you know that you're supposed to be up by 6:30 or whatever. So just that, setting yourself up, like sabotaging your own success, and then when you don't succeed in the end, you're like, yeah, see, because I would never really, I'm not really that person. So those are just some of the traits. I mean, there might be more, but maybe those are just some of the quick traits in which you can start to see in yourself, or maybe in the lives of other people, and say, oh,
Yeah.
that could be imposter syndrome showing itself.
So, just to personify this, so you might be thinking, oh, imposter syndrome, I've never really heard of this. I don't think this really relates to me. But if you look at the key types of individuals that may pose as an imposter or have this imposter syndrome, we have, I think, about 5 of them. The first one could be perfectionist.
Yeah.
So this is someone who strives for the best, continuously striving for the best. Even when they do attain the best, they don't recognize the best,
Yeah.
and they're constantly focusing on their shortcomings, their weaknesses. They're never actually satisfied and content. You could be someone who's considered as a natural genius, right?
Yeah.
someone who sets extremely high expectations, extremely high goals, and realistic ones to the point that they're not able to achieve those, right? So obviously, in the end, you're going to fail. Or you're someone who prefers to do things all alone. So you're a soloist. You don't ask for help. You don't want to work with others because you don't want to seem as though you're lacking of any attributes or as though you're incompetent. Babe, what other...
So maybe another trait or another way in which you could say superhero, where you overwork yourself and you just think you can do everything and anything. So you keep working and you keep working yourself out.
Hoping they won't recognize it.
Sort of like covering your shortcomings by just trying to work as hard as you can. And another one could be just thinking that you're an expert and you want to always to continue, so you just push yourself to continue to learn. And I think especially this one, as we're going through these types of imposter syndromes, this expert one, I think, sort of came a little closer home to my own experiences. So as you know, I've wanted to start a videography business for a while. And I think one of the reasons why it has taken longer than it should, I think, is because of this problem here. Because I always feel, at whatever point that I want to start, I always feel like there's something that I need to learn that I haven't learned yet. So like I just end up pushing myself back to studying, pushing myself back to research, posting my like YouTube videos and just binging YouTube videos, like tutorials or whatever, because I feel like I'm still lacking in a certain way, and if I start, then I'll fail. So I'd rather just push myself to that corner and keep reading and keep learning. And
you never do it.
You never really go out and try out the actual thing, because you're always constantly thinking, oh, what if I don't know this, and then that will make me fail. So you see that all these things, they can show themselves in, it could be, you could even be thinking that you're being logical in the way that you're reasoning, but if you really try to look at what's really happening beneath, you find that it's a fear of maybe failing, and you don't want the world to really see who you really are, and you sort of mask that with whatever it is.
Now, obviously, when we do have this type of experience where you feel like you're not your authentic self, you're an imposter, you're putting on this facade each and every single day, it's something that has been, brewing within you for quite a long time, right? So this is something that usually comes about either because of your upbringing. So it could be the manner in which, you were treated in your family, because our family unit is really the first place where we learn to value human. Self, to love yourself, to know what your worth is. So it could be that your parents never really showed you much love. They were constantly criticizing you, or they kept trying to push on certain, practices onto you to the point where you don't really identify with it, but because they're telling you this is what you are, this is what you should be, this is the right path to go. So you're constantly working towards what your parents feel you should do, but deep down you know that that's not who you are. So you grow up being pretty much this being that pleases your parents, but you never really took time to understand what it is that you want, or who you truly are. Or it could be the negative things that your siblings constantly say to you. They call you things, they call you names, and you start to believe that. So why should I be anything else? Right? Or they tell you that there's certain boundaries that you can't overcome. So you grow up believing that those boundaries are there, when really they aren't.
They aren't. So I was just going to say, I think this is especially on how or why people have imposter syndrome. So what you just said on upbringing, I think parents, if there are any parents listening to this is really important, because the way that what you just said, the things that you say to you, be very careful with the things, about the things that you're saying to your children. Another way in which, just even from like the upbringing that you're saying, when parents set parents that are so focused on achievement, like high achievement. Now, don't get me wrong, making sure that your kids succeed in life is important, and you need to make sure that you're setting the standards for your kids to be able to attain those standards. But what do you do, or what do you say to your child when instead of an A, he comes home with a B
Or a C.
or a C? What do you say to the child? Do you just make them feel like that's the end of the world, and that if they don't get that A, then they're done? There's so many aspects to it. So if you're always bringing up like this standard of you need to be this or else you're nothing, then even if that child starts, you start to create this image in them that I am not myself unless if I do this, or unless if I become this, and that can lead to that feeling of feeling like you're not your true self. And even when you attain those high standards, you start to feel as though you're not really it's just who your parents wanted you to be and not really who you are, and that creates problems. And I think another way or at least why or imposter syndrome can
bring
itself up when we experience new environments or just new roles. Could be at work or just a new space, new friends maybe, and just like that pressure of first of all, you have these roles. Say it's at a job, for example. I think that's the easiest place to or maybe even in school, like a new class or something, and you have this new roles and these new responsibilities that you need to accomplish, but at the same time you lack the experience, because obviously you're just starting in this place, you're just fitting in this position. So because you need to impress, I'm not impressed, but you need to meet up to your standards and your responsibilities, but at the same time you lack the experience. So that sort of starts to bring up those feelings of, oh my God, how am I going to meet this? Maybe I'm not actually qualified for this. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here, and maybe I'm in the wrong space. So you start to feel like an imposter, a fraud, and just scared that they're not going to find out. I mean, they're going to find out, and I'm going to be kicked out because they'll know that I'm not experienced and I do not know how to figure out this new role.
So, initially when you brought up imposter syndrome, I honestly did not feel like I related.
Right.
I think when you look at it at face value, you don't really think, this seems to be a bit more extreme.
Right.
Who really thinks of themselves as an imposter?
Right.
But when I was reading about it, and especially the new environment one, I think for me was more relatable.
Okay.
Like at the start of this year, going to a new job, I think that was okay, right? Going for a new job, the role that I applied for, that's fine. But then now when my role changed, not because I asked for it, right? I was simply minding my own business, working in the role that I applied for, and then now suddenly, I'm being given a role that is much senior than that. And in that situation, I did not understand why, right? I'm new. I'm 2 months old in that organization. There are other people who've been there longer, other people who are more experienced than me, especially in the NGO sector. I'm not going to say more experience in, whatever that role required, but definitely in the NGO sector.
Yeah.
And also another thing is that I'm young. I'm pretty much the youngest person in the entire organization.
Right.
And then I'm 2 months old, and now suddenly, I'm being given a very senior role. And that in itself, if me not doubting myself was, if me doubting myself was not enough, now everybody else in the organization obviously is looking at me like, oh, why her? How come? Will she make it? Let's probably wait for her to fail.
Right.
Like, these are conversations that are actually going on in the organization. And I think that's one moment where I was starting to feel like, they have a point. I mean, how was I selected for this? What if, the person who put me in this position, as time goes by, now starts to see that oh, I made a big mistake. This girl is not,
It's
up to this task. She doesn't have the capability. She doesn't have the experience. So that's definitely a time where, I experienced that. And I
yeah.
think it was throughout the year. And, just wondering at which point will I be called in by the CD to say, thank you, but
But no
you're
thanks.
not, you're not cutting it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's I think so new environments. Yeah.
So how do we overcome this imposter syndrome? How do you deal with it?
I think that's key. Otherwise, why are we doing this? So there are many ways in which you can start to address whenever we're having these feelings of, oh, I'm a fraud or whatever. The first step that you can take is to share your thoughts. Just whatever it is that you're thinking about, whatever it is that you're thinking about in the moment, just talk to someone about it. Like, just speak your thoughts, your beliefs, whatever it is that you're believing in that moment. Just talk to someone. And what that starts to do is, even as you're speaking to yourself, right, you start to hear yourself even before the person, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but like even before the person speaks back to you, as you're speaking, you start to hear how irrational you are. Like, okay, just because this has happened, does that really mean that? Like you start to see how you're even failing to connect the dots as you're talking to that person on why this then leads to that. So just speaking it out helps you to hear yourself, but also maybe your friend, if you can't hear yourself, but whoever it is that you're speaking to, can help you to see where you're being irrational and also where because for the most part, imposter syndrome, like what you said when you're defining it, it's an internal experience. For the most part, it's not really that is real. Like that, you're not really an imposter. The reason why, for example, you're in that job, for example, like the experience that you just shared, the reason why you were picked for that position was not because of anything else, but that they saw that you're capable of handling those and you did handle them, right? So you don't. It's for the most part, it's not real. It's just a feeling that you have. So as you start, because it's not real and it's all in your head, as you start to speak it out, you start to see how ridiculous it is. So speak it out. I think that's the first step in which you can start to address this.
So the second way that you could possibly overcome this imposter syndrome is just remember who you are in Christ. I'm personally someone who doesn't like to dwell on negative thoughts. So in any moment where, I start to question, oh, but how did I get here? Why am I, experiencing this that I'm experiencing? My go-to place is immediately to, pray, seek God, and just allow Him to help me understand that situation, right? I constantly have to remind myself that Christ created me in His image. I am capable of doing anything through His strength alone and not my strength. So if I'm constantly going to rely on what I can do, then definitely I will fail. But I need to understand that I have been brought this far. I have experienced and attained whatever it is I've attained because God wanted me to be here.
Yeah.
Right? I was selected for this particular role because God saw it fit. Sometimes we like to think, oh, I definitely thought, yes, I'm too young. Why am I here? This doesn't make sense. I have no experience with the NGO sector, let alone leading, departments in the NGO sector. But God saw that I could fulfill, that role with whatever capabilities and experience that I had.
Yeah.
So always remember who you are in Christ. If you don't know your identity in Christ, then you can't possibly overcome this. And I think if you have time, just meditate or read through 2 Corinthians 3, verse 45. It just speaks on understanding that all your competencies do not come from self, right? Within ourselves, we cannot do this, but everything comes from God. So that's definitely a key point. Know where your strength lies.
Yeah. I think that's important. When you realize that you're just you, and then there's an external force that sort of enables you to be whatever it is that you're called to be. Then you start to realize that whatever it is that comes, who the person that has enabled you has given you enough ability, strength to be able to face that. Yeah. And the third one is assessing your abilities. So you want to be able to realistically sit down, because so you want to realistically sit down and list, maybe if you can, or just think about what your actual abilities are, what you're good at, and maybe even what you're not as good at. Because what imposter syndrome seeks to do is that it attacks that very thing. It tells you that, oh, you're not good enough to do this, you're not good enough to do that. But as I said, it's mostly in your head.
Yeah.
So you want to sit down and actually ask yourself, being honest with yourself, what am I truly good at? And one way of doing that is looking at the past. How have I handled this situation? Well, like, what trait did I show in which I performed well in this task? Oh, I was good at this, I was good at that, I was good at this. So you realistically list down what you are. It's sort of like a self-assessment of who you are and what your actual abilities are, which then you start to use as a tool to be able to fight against those feelings when they come back, when they start to say, oh, you're not good at this, but no, but my past record, I'm actually good at this and I can handle this. You know? Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think sometimes when you're dealing with, moments of self-doubt, you wait for other people to come and affirm you and tell you that, no, but you are worth it. You are capable of doing this.
Right.
But I think what we need to understand is that this needs to come from self. You cannot overcome this imposter syndrome based on what other people are telling you, because as we mentioned, it's an internal experience.
Yeah.
So you need to make a point to affirm yourself each and every single day. What are your strengths? What are you good at? What characteristics do you have that can actually help you to, overcome and achieve the things that you want to achieve?
Yeah.
Affirming yourself is very important. Sometimes you want to be validated by other people, but we need to first learn self-love and appreciate yourself and remind yourself that you are definitely worth it.
Yeah.
So as we're working towards dealing with imposter syndrome, another way in which we can tackle it is to stop comparing ourselves to other people.
Yeah.
So one method that I could have used to try to talk myself out of believing that I was suitable for this new role could have been to say, I only have 5 years working experience. There are people here who have over 10 years working experience and in the NGO sector.
Yeah.
Or I could have said that they have, all this acquired knowledge specifically about the organization, and I've only been here for 2 months, right? There's so many things that you can nitpick to say that, other people have that you don't have. But all that does really is that diminishes the uniqueness that God has given you to be able to shine in that particular situation. Yeah. You might be thinking that they're better suited for a specific role, or that you're not fit to be in certain circles because you're lacking of something. But really, in whatever things that God has blessed you with, whatever strengths that you have, there is something that you have to offer to others as well. Your uniqueness is something that can be added of great value to whatever circles you're in, whatever positions you may be given, and really any other situations that you may have to face in life.
Yeah.
So I think, just to sum all this up, imposter syndrome is something that we could experience at whatever different phases in our lives. It could be something that has been there from the beginning and we really can't put our finger on it to say this is where it first showed its face. Or it's something that could be recurring as and when you enter into your new environment or are facing a new situation in your life that you just feel like you're so inexperienced for.
Yeah.
But I think what is key for us to remember is whatever situation it is, whether it's something that we've been brought up to believe based on the way we were treated as a child, all the negative things we were told about ourselves that we have now began to believe and we just embody. And we can't even identify to say that this is who Lindley truly is, or whether it's something that, we try to tell ourselves just to make sure that we continue to do the bare minimum and don't truly achieve the goals because we're fearful of what we actually could become if we do that. Yeah. Whatever imposter syndrome looks like to you in your particular season, what is key is to remember that all our capabilities come from God. We were created in God's image. We were created in God's image, which means that anything that God sees possible for us to do, we can do. Yeah. Don't limit yourself to what other people have told you are. Don't limit yourself to, whatever, what's that word? Stereotypes. Whatever stereotypes there may be against your gender, whether it's your ethnicity, or whatever, age group you're in. Don't limit yourself to that. You can overcome it. Affirm yourself each day. Remember your strengths. Remember those great qualities that you have. Focus on those. Don't try to overwork yourself to the point where you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Yeah. Trying to cover up for the slack that you have made. Just show up each day. Trust and believe that you've been put in that place for a reason. You could be sitting in a room of people who have achieved so much compared to what you have, so you may think. People who have so many degrees, people who have, who are married, have children, have these families, people who have well-established businesses. And you might think that because you don't have any of those things, then you're not worthy of sitting at that table. I think we need to start seeing our uniqueness as a blessing and something that anybody else around us, no matter how big or small in status, could learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. All right. So that is imposter syndrome. That is our episode this week. We hope you enjoy it. Hope you share it and like, subscribe, comment,
share
with whomever on whatever platforms that you may seem fit.
Hope to see you soon.
Bye.